Chapter 9. Close Your Eyes. Hello, guys.
We'll have you wait outside at first, and one of us will come get you or contact you if we need your insight. No interactions with Miss Ricci.
I understand. As we were on our way to talk to this aide of Gabriel Ricci, Reuben had caught Winter up on last night's late discovery. Of course, Winter wasn't yet convinced we'd stumbled on an Esper experimentation plot. He did have to acknowledge the connections between Powell, the Emersons, and Senator Wilson were solidifying.
Reuben, I hope you realize that if this goes the way you expect, despite all promises, we're not going to be able to keep Nisa out of this case. I am aware of that. If some sort of illegal research is uncovered, people will want to know the original source. And Quill knows that as well. What he wants isn't permanent secrecy, since that won't be on the table now that this unknown chemical is central to the case with the Emersons. He just wants time to prepare, but he understands this will reach a point it's out of my hands, and has assured me they're working on their end to make sure Nisa is ready.
I hope part of working on their end is putting Vic in a deep, dark hole.
In our last conversation, he said he's bracing for the fallout, but the longer we can keep the source of Arensol out of the spotlight, the more time they'll have. I hope you realize we may not be able to keep what happened with the hospital records out of the spotlight at this rate either. I highly doubt Ricci is going to be willing to talk, and even if we massage the facts on how you got the information, there's going to be an inquiry if it seems like our affidavit needs adjusting.
I'm unsure what the fallout will be of people realizing the implications of a Queen rank in society, but I know this case is already bigger than that.
We can worry about the larger implications later. Like with Nisa, we can keep the lid on that for a while. It's not like we're going to publicize every detail of this investigation. I just want Morgan to be prepared for the fact this could get ugly.
No offense, but I've seen ugly before.
Well, if Ricci won't talk, you may see it again.
I already knew that, and I didn't think it could possibly get worse than anything I'd already experienced. That's optimism for you. Though I supposed we'd find out. As an aide to Senator Wilson, there was always a chance Gabriel Ricci wouldn't be in the city. However, the Senate wasn't in session at the moment. And given she must have been at the hospital a few days prior, Reuben suspected she was around. When we reached her building, Reuben and Winter headed in first. They wanted me to stay out of sight, and that ended up meaning I stayed outside. She lived in a busy downtown area above a shopping center, so I didn't stand out as I loitered around waiting for them to contact me. I just stood casually in front of a shop storefront, watching the crowd. The last time I'd been alone in public like this had been the day Endgame attempted to apprehend me off the footpath. Such a startling turning point. An unexpected event that sent my entire life reeling on a side path I could never have imagined. It was strange thinking of how that day led me to where I was. But if that hadn't happened, I wouldn't have been able to get to know Reuben. And this case probably wouldn't be progressing either. They'd have been stalled long before now, and the culprits might not ever be brought to justice. Though that could still very well be the case. Could I say I was glad I was here now? I wasn't sure about that, but I was glad to have met Reuben. I was glad he was in my life. And I hated thinking about the possibility that he so easily might not have been. But I didn't think I'd ever be able to say I was glad Endgame derailed things as they had. It was more like I was just relieved something good came out of it, and I was sad at the thought of missing some of the things I'd experienced here. That was beginning to edge out the anger and devastation I'd felt at first. Besides, it would be awful if the crimes being committed continued on and more people suffered because of them. If I could help stop that, maybe it was worth having had a really bad day once. You should be focusing on the case, not contemplating the meaning of life, Morgan. I berated myself for allowing my thoughts to wander when this wasn't exactly the place for thinking about things like greater purpose or my place in the world. I checked the time to find I'd been standing on the street alone for a whole 2 minutes. They probably hadn't even reached her flat yet. I should at least wait that long before I try to become one with the universe or whatever I'm doing right now. As I stood waiting for Reuben to call me up, two young individuals exited the building near where I was standing. They were talking in quiet voices and walking at a hurried pace that caught my attention. "Hello, you have a look." I locked eyes with one of them without intending to, surprised to find myself staring down an Esper. And not a low-level one either. His color was a bright orange, which wasn't a color I'd seen before. Bishop, I think? Oh, you're a cutie. The other is an Esper as well. Her color was a blotchy and cold purple. Wait. King rank? Just casually walking around? I'm pretty sure King is purple. The man's gaze slid from mine as they retreated, but my eyes continued to follow them. That's odd. It was only seconds later that there was a faint shout from inside the building. At first, I hadn't even been sure I heard it. But my eyes snapped back to the two Espers when they broke into a run right after the second shout. It was them. Whatever was happening, it was them. And that shout, I was pretty sure it was Winter. Oh boy. I would get into so much trouble if I followed these guys. I don't even need to follow them. I could use, you know, I was gonna say the Force. I could use Psi to follow them if I really needed to. But I was given orders to wait. I'm on thin ice with Winter and Phil. I think it'd be good if I was flexible and not stubborn. I wasn't sure what to do. I was not in a crime series. I was not a detective or a public safety officer. That wasn't my job even now. But I'll admit I still nearly broke into a run to give chase almost on instinct. However, I did not. Instead, I expanded my sphere to track them, since that was probably the more logical and acceptable course of action. See, girl? The moment it encompassed them, I felt it slam against their side, intruding into the sphere of the purple Esper. And beyond that, I could sense that person's awareness of me. Not of someone, but of me, personally. I yanked my Psi away as if I'd been burned. Seconds later, Winter bolted out of the building as well. He spotted the two fleeing Espers right away and darted after them.
Hey!
Winter, wait! Ugh, he wouldn't know they were Espers! This time I did give chase, only because Winter needed to be warned, and without the nanosystem, I couldn't just send him a message. Oh, right. I doubted he'd answer his handheld while engaged in the foot chase if I attempted to call him on that. The two Espers were already well out of sight, and probably beyond our ability to catch up, courtesy of their head start. Gritting my teeth, I expanded my Psi again. I just have to deal with the consequences of them knowing I was following. They had moved through multiple alleys already, and I had no idea how we'd even catch up at this rate. They're fast. As I tried to at least catch Winter, I found myself wishing for some way to just get us both to where the Espers were. Or get him there and me not there. If we could just pop over to where they are long enough to get a good look at them or something. I had the thought and felt instant regret when apparently my brain decided to grant that wish. The world warped and... oh shit. Hi! So much for not following you. And you've got a third friend. We love that. You guys all have amazing looks, for what that's worth. I stumbled out into the alley right in front of three surprisingly young individuals clustered together, and, I think, preparing to leave. They all stared, and I stared back. Hello. Now how do I get out of here? I was tensed, desperately trying to undo what I'd just done and ready to be attacked or something. But they didn't move toward me or do anything but stare at me. And I wondered if Winter would manage to catch up to us on his own at this rate. It's the one that I saw earlier. The purple Esper murmured it in a low voice to the others. Then the young man with the bright orange Psi stepped forward. I took a rapid step back.
Are you... with Endgame?
No, I'm not.
Then what's a high-ranking Esper like you doing helping Utpal?
She wasn't a part of Project Aquarius, was she? Project what?
No, she's that girl in the news. That queen rank.
I wasn't sure if I should confirm or deny that.
Are they forcing you to help them?
The one that asked, the one with blue side this time, seemed so sad when they asked that. Angry. Okay, so you're the knight. What the heck is this? Yeah, it's got quite the strong group here. These people, whoever they were, did not seem like hardened criminals by any stretch. They were just kids. Maybe I could hold them here until Winter and Reuben showed up. They're not forcing me exactly. My situation is complicated. Why were you in that building? And why are my colleagues interested in finding you?
We didn't do anything. She was like that when we found her.
What?
They're always faster than we are. Every damn time.
Right, because there's two groups that met at the Emersons, and they fought as well. So you were trying to get to them, but the other group took them out before you could do so, and then it happened again? Did it happen to the senator when you're saying she was like that already?
Leon, I'm sorry.
What in the world are they talking about?
Riley, it's not your fault. You. Don't get in our way. We don't want to hurt people. Just get to them first so we can...
Guys, the others are almost here. Let's go. We have to reach the next target first this time.
And they're gone. The one with blue sai, the knight, stepped closer to the others, looked my way, and they were gone. I didn't try to stop them because what could I even do? Winter rounded the corner moments later and found me staring at the empty place in front of me.
I found her!
He had his HCD to his ear as he stopped to catch his breath, expression as angry as I expected. When he lowered it, I imagined he was going to start lecturing, so I held up a hand before he opened his mouth. I was good, and I stayed there. My brain was like, I'm teleporting. Don't start. That was unintentional. I was only trying to keep them in my sphere so I could tell you where they went. Teleporting was not in the plan. I don't want to hear another lecture. I glanced back to where they had been standing earlier. They didn't try to hurt me anyway.
Did you know they were Uspers?
I did. I didn't exactly want to shout it on the streets, but I didn't think you'd answer if I pinged your HCD. I was just trying to get close enough to let you know without alerting everyone on this block.
I guess I can understand that. Their ranks, do we know those?
Well, one was a knight, obviously. I assumed the others were a bishop and a rook, but I haven't encountered enough ranked espers to be sure. Not while I was aware of Psy the way I am now. What happened in there? Who were those three?
What the hell happened?
Here we go.
Save the lecture for later, Reuben. It was an accidental teleportation. She was only trying to warn me they were Espers.
Winter stood up for me.
Which I do appreciate, because if I'd even managed to catch up, I might have been in trouble on my own.
They didn't seem violent, so maybe not. They didn't even try to attack when I caught them by surprise. They asked if you were forcing me to help you, as if they thought I might need help.
What? That doesn't matter! You should have stayed out of it, Morgan. You are a civilian. You can't chase after people. You aren't an agent. You're not even trained. And I didn't bring you for this kind of thing.
You weren't even expecting this kind of thing.
That's beside the point, and you know it. I said save it, Reuben. We need to get back to Ricci. Medics are already on the way, and a nearby squad car already arrived. That's why I followed you.
What happened with Miss Ricci?
She was unresponsive in her flat when we arrived. The door was open and she was on the ground. She's not...
Then those three. So that's what they meant. So it was her. Well, so much for the theory that she's, like, behind everything, and she got attacked.
We don't know. We saw them leaving that floor when we arrived, so when we found her, I wanted to chase them down for questioning. They were already fleeing by the time I got out of the building.
They started running when we heard what I assume was one of you shouting. I could tell they were espers right away. But I wasn't sure what to do when they ran. I started tracking them with my Psi, but was startled when I realized what I assume was a bishop became aware of me. You started chasing them right around then, and, as I said, I was worried you wouldn't know they were espers.
So you followed?
I did intend to stay out of the way once you had that information.
Then how did you manage to teleport instead?
The same way I did the last time. I had their location caged so I could keep them in my sight, and I was thinking that I wished I could get Winter to their location, and then teleported myself there instead.
Yeah, you'll have to get control of that. You cannot be accidentally teleporting yourself into dangerous situations at the drop of a hat.
Yeah, well, I don't have lessons on that subject. I didn't even think I could still do it. I assumed there was a time limit on how long I could retain copied skills, or something.
Looks like you were wrong.
Yeah.
Come on, we can talk about this more later. I have a feeling the scene back at Ricci's place is chaos right about now. We need to get back to it. Please, just...
I know. I am trying.
Sure.
I had a feeling I was in for so many more lectures. This whole route is you lecturing Reuben and him lecturing you, and everybody else lecturing both of you. They hadn't let me into Gabrielle Ricci's flat. Not this time. Not without knowing the situation. Even Reuben wasn't allowed in. And everyone was wearing protection in case there was Arensal present in the air again. The case had already claimed one more victim. We needed to be sure there weren't any more. Instead, we left the cleanup to others and went back to the office, where Reuben and Winter had a frantic discussion with Phil. Then calls and messages. Many of them. I continued to be amazed by the way they compartmentalized what happened. How they didn't pause for long to take in the tragedy. How they kept going. It wasn't as easy for me, but I tried. It wasn't the first time Death had been involved in this case, but it felt like we'd have been able to save her if we'd just been faster. There was guilt, anger, mostly confusion. I was thinking about that when Reuben showed up with a cup of coffee.
You okay?
Yeah, I think so, just... I shrugged, not sure how to explain it. I took the cup from him and took a sip, then made a face because their coffee was terrible.
I get it. Look, we've been working on a timeline of everything to lay it all out for Phil clearly, and reconstructing some of what we thought we knew to this point, as well as adding in some new findings by Winter. We're getting ready to sit down with Phil. He wants you there. You up for it?
Of course. I stood and Reuben guided me to a side room, a reassuring hand on my back. Oh, this room. That's a fancy office, Phil. When I entered, I noticed right away that they'd made a digital display that was similar to Reuben's corkboard in his home office, except much more organized. Phil came in just after us.
Sorry, had a call. Now.
He flopped down, crossing his arms over his chest, raising an eyebrow at their display.
Let's hear it. All of it this time. Please and thank you. I'm going to have to lay some foundation for everything else first. I'm listening. The gist of it is that we know of a shadow dome existing under Aureli's care, but outside of public knowledge. It's called Nisa, and I have a contact there. A few years back, Nisa discovered a chemical capable of altering, even increasing an individual's psi, Arensal. That said, the chemical is dangerous, causing flash power surges that can lead to instant burnout or death. For this reason, the research was restricted and never publicized outside their city. However, my contact there suspects that this research leaked to the outside some time ago. He's been trying to identify the source of the leak with little luck. Alright. Sounds like the level of bullshit I can expect from you. Go on. just under 2 months ago, a man named Nate Powell was found unconscious and roughed up in an alley here in Erida. At the time, due to abnormalities in his phoric system, we believed he suffered a psionic attack. When I took Morgan to him for a psychometric reading, however, she realized that Powell is an Esper, but he wasn't registered as one. For reference, Nate Powell is an administrative coordinator for Esp-Anon, an Esper support group here in Erida. Fast forward to the Emerson case a few days ago. 2 adults found deceased in their flat. One is a P-class Esper. Morgan and I both experienced unexplained power surges at the scene. In the process of investigation, we found a damaged jet cartridge containing an unknown substance, which I've confirmed with Nisa is in fact Arensol. Our theory is that Morgan was exposed to it in the air due to the cartridge damage, and I was exposed when I touched it. This is where things start getting tangled. Start.
At the look on Reuben's face, Phil leaned back again, motioning with his hand for Reuben to continue.
We learned from Morgan that the Emersons had begun a new project of some kind, which, based on Winter's research, we now believe to involve data organization for Community Psi. Winter's digging also turned up something else interesting. Esp-Anon was funneling clients to Community Psi on the grounds that CP had more resources to help them. So you think the attacks are linked? It doesn't end there either. We'd already considered a connection to the cases because of Nate Powell's Psi. He wasn't supposed to be an Esper, and now we have a dangerous chemical that can cause Psi development in non-Espers involved. We were already considering the possibility of Arensol exposure, so we returned to the hospital hoping to confirm whether that was the case. But once there, we found he'd been checked out, not transferred. Morgan confirmed through psychometry that he was collected by 3 unknown Espers. Needless to say, the timing and circumstances were suspicious.
He shot me a sidelong look at this point before he continued. Then she kinda, hacked the computer and found a name.
Using her Psi, Morgan was able to confirm that the name on the hospital release was Gabriel Ricci, aide to UTG Senator Sophie Wilson. Wilson, as it turns out, may also have ties to Community Psi and Esp-Anon under 2 separate aliases. And it's also possible she's an investor in an Aurelian shell corporation with ties to Nisa.
I glanced at Phil to see how he took that, but his face was impassive as he listened.
We decided to talk to Ricci, but we were too late. We pursued a group of Espers leaving the scene. We've labeled them our alleyway trio for the time being. In a brief and non-violent confrontation, they denied harming Miss Ricci. They also made several cryptic statements, implying the involvement of another group that may be trying to find people related to all this. And something about an Aquarius project. They then fled via teleportation. Initial reports on Ricci confirm signs of cardiac arrest, but there are also indications of abnormalities in her phoric system. We're hoping further analysis can confirm either psionic attack or possible Arensol exposure. So what is the theory here? You have a senator from the Triad, experimental chemicals from a shadow dome, and bodies piling up at this point. What the hell is going on? I can't imagine more than 1 or 2 ways to tie this one together, honestly.
I mean, he wasn't wrong. If the Triad got their hands on a substance that could enhance Psi, then there were limited things they'd be doing with it.
What you're implying right now takes us to a hell of a dark place, Reuben. I know. What is the role of Community Psi and Esp-Anon in all this, then? Esper support groups are an entryway into communities with a lot of desperate people, some of whom might not be noticed if they disappear. I don't like what you're suggesting, Ashton. I don't like it either.
Phil let out a soft groan, then stood and went to Reuben's digital display, shifting around some of the notes.
So let me get this straight. You're suggesting the UTG is sponsoring some kind of Esper experiments using this Arensol. They're using the support groups to find test subjects, which puts Nate Powell and the Emersons dead center in the scheme. Presumably the experiments need espers, since Arensol appears to be deadly for normal people, but less so for espers if Reuben and Morgan are anything to go by. Powell was sending espers to Community Sci for collection, I guess. The Emersons were managing client data and would have had access to where they were being sent. That's what we're thinking, yes. Wilson is the UTG contact, and Ricci was involved as her aide. Who targeted the Emersons, Powell, and Ricci? Is this some sort of cleanup attempt? We can't answer that yet. Okay, so who the hell is this alleyway trio? We're not totally sure about that yet either, but we don't think they were the ones involved in Powell's disappearance. Morgan said that there were two groups of espers at the Emersons, and they were clashing with each other. If we consider what the trio said in the alley, they may have been at that scene, and it doesn't seem to me like our trio is the group trying to clean things up. So the trio clashed with the cleanup crew. That is our current theory, yeah. And the Arensol. Why was it at the Emerson scene? You said it yourself. It appears to be pretty deadly for normal people in the right doses. And as you know, phoric abnormalities can be detected in a deceased brain for a very short period after death. So if you give someone enough Arensol to cause a flash burnout, it could look like any number of natural deaths in an autopsy. The only reason we caught any abnormalities in Ricci was because of the timing. In Powell's case, he survived, but because he wasn't believed to be an esper, the abnormalities were attributed to psionic attack, rather than something like psi fatigue or a power surge. So they intended to use it to assassinate the Emersons, but got desperate when they were interrupted by your trio, and they used the quick and dirty method before running away. Just a theory for now, but yeah, that's what I think. Reuben, this case is so full of holes I have half a mind to shut it down right now, I hope you realize. Just turn it over to Endgame and let them sort it out. And the only reason I'm not already on a call with them is because I know what's going to happen the moment they catch wind of a queen rank going around looking into everyone's private information. Not to mention shadow domes, chemicals that alter psi and human experimentation.
I didn't look at everyone's information.
The UTG is our boss, Miss Leone, and you want to drag one of its senators into an absolute clusterfuck of a case.
I mean, I didn't personally want to do that.
You always bring the most annoying shit to my doorstep, Reuben. Always. I didn't ask for this case, Phil. You need to plug up some of these holes before you even think about going after a UTG senator. I want you to find this trio of yours. Immediately. I want you to find out what happened to the espers Powell was sending into Community Sci. Find anyone else who was involved in that, and get a watch on them right away. Got it. And look into any natural deaths of any individual related to Esp Anon or Community Sci for the last 6 months or so. As soon as Ricci's place is cleared, I want you there, Morgan, to see what you can see. And I want you to head back to the Emerson place too. See if you can confirm whether your alleyway trio was there.
I understand.
We need more than psychometric experiences. Information from some shady guy in a shadow dome, and ill-gotten data that violates God knows how many privacy laws. And we need to know who the next target is so we can get there first. We're working on it. Work harder.
He was looking extremely haggard when he left. I couldn't say I blamed him. Hearing it all laid out like that made it clear how serious it was, and made it clear how much information we lacked. We had our major players, we had dotted lines between them, but turning those into solid lines wasn't going to be easy. especially Senator Wilson. Under normal circumstances, I didn't think a consultant would be helping with the digging, but in this instance, I pitched in anyway. What I was curious about was this Aquarius project, but I had no idea how to even go about searching for that. I wasn't sure the others were either because no one brought it up. I had a feeling we would have been at the office until midnight if not for the fact that I was there. As such, Reuben made an effort to get me home at a somewhat reasonable hour, which I thought was probably to his benefit as well. But not until after a lot of effort and distressingly little result. When we got home, it felt like we had been gone for a century, though it had just been a single workday. Reuben surprisingly didn't disappear to work in his office right away. He joined me on the sofa for a cup of tea I desperately wished would somehow relax me more than it was.
I'm sorry for today, Morgan. It wasn't supposed to happen this way.
Aww. That's cute. I sat up, reaching to gently touch his cheek. Why are you apologizing? I'm the troublemaker. I was expecting a lecture, not an apology. I need you to stop feeling guilty over nothing. Please. He let out a soft breath and covered my hand with his own. A soft smile came to his lips as he pressed his cheek into my hand.
When all this started, I had no idea it would lead to this point.
Us sitting on your sofa while I caress your cheek?
You sitting on my sofa, caressing my anything.
Oh my. Oh, Reuben, you walked right into that one.
Wait, I think I need to backtrack that one.
Mm-hmm. I inched a little closer to him, then shifted my legs to drape them over his lap as I rested my elbow on the back of the sofa. Naughty, naughty. He shook his head, that awkward look on his face replaced with a resigned smile. He pulled my legs into a more comfortable position, twisting to face me as well. It was a stressful day, but moments like these made it more bearable.
Morgan, look, this might be a bad time, but I think it's wise to talk about this before... before things progress much further. I know we talked about not having to rush, and this isn't me trying to do that. You realize if you weren't here, I'd still be at the office. I'd probably be there all night. Hell, you've seen how often I'm up all night even here.
I have noticed that, yeah. Why?
I guess I just want you to be fully aware of what you're in for with me. It can be hard to turn the mind off, especially on a case like this. No, on any case. It's hard for me to not get stuck on it. I don't want to drag you into that.
So far, you haven't.
Yeah, it's always easy at the start. Always. And then it's not so easy later on when I get comfortable. I have never been able to make it work with anyone because of this. I'm worried that what I'm showing you right now isn't what you'll get later.
Are you saying that later on you think you'll start neglecting me and working all the time? More than you do now?
I would never intentionally ignore the needs of a partner. Ever. But this is a high-stress job and I struggle with balance.
We can work on balance.
I worry whether you can put up with the demands this job puts on me, that it will inevitably put on us. Right now you're working with me on a case, so it's different. But when you're not, I'm just not sure I trust myself.
Then trust me. I'm not a relationship expert. I've had one long-term and serious relationship. And it ended when he traveled to the moon and ghosted me for a year. So that's maybe not a good track record. But it's not like I have no experience with it. I've watched my parents juggle my dad's high-stress job and busy schedule too, and they make it work. You need someone who understands the occasional need for long hours and travel, which I do. And I need someone who is willing to occasionally be dragged out of his study and rest. Are you?
I always try to be, yes.
Look, it may take time to work out what each person's emotional needs are and time to figure out how to meet those needs when things are hectic. But we can figure out how to do that as we go. What I'm saying is that I'm willing to do that work. I like you, and I like being with you. I'm not worried about your job. The only reason I can see that it wouldn't work is if I communicate my needs or concerns and you repeatedly ignore them.
I'd never do that. I never try to do that.
I know. I shifted my legs off his lap and moved closer to him, capturing his face in my hands. All I need is for you to let me distract you sometimes.
I wish I could let you distract me every moment of every day.
I would gladly do it. Maybe not every moment, but all the good ones at least. I tugged him down for a tender kiss. A trembling breath brushed my lips as he pulled me against him. I opened my mouth, letting my tongue flicker against his, and this time he let out a soft groan, hands sliding over my shoulders and down my back. Warmth spread through me, and for a moment I clung to him, realizing how much I needed him to distract me as well at the moment. It had been a long day, and I hadn't let myself think about it at all, and now I didn't want to think about it. I wanted to just drown in him for a while, as long as he'd let me. When we parted, he rested his forehead against mine for a space, then kissed me again. One quick kiss, followed by a longer one. Then a third long, fiercely desperate kiss. And at last, I felt the full force of his want, and understood just how much he'd been holding back all this time. Hooray! Our chamomile tea sat forgotten as, without warning, I found myself leaning backwards, Reuben's warm, hungry lips pressed to the underside of my jaw. You know, I'd like to think this is going somewhere, but I'm expecting a phone call from Winter in like 3 seconds. Then my shoulders were pushed back against the sofa cushions, Reuben above me, his expression a wash of anguished longing. He lowered his head again, placing a kiss below my ear, then the side of my neck. My teeth flashed over my lower lip as I shut my eyes, breathing a soft sigh. One of his hands traced the path from my arm to my wrist, trailing goosebumps in its wake. I threaded my fingers through his hair as his mouth reached my collarbone, and he paused, letting his head rest against my shoulder. His breath warmed the hollow of my throat, sending tremors through me each time it brushed my skin.
I should stop here, because it's going to be much harder later if I don't.
Oh no, what a tragedy that would be. The noise that escaped him was somewhere between a chuckle and a very exasperated sigh. He propped himself up, a tender smile on his face as he let his fingers graze my cheek. Okay, he did not get a phone call. It was just Reuben himself that stopped it.
I'm sure you don't need me badgering you with all this tonight. You had a lousy day.
All the more reason to encourage you to badger me even more with all this. I like all this, I will have you know. I leaned up to press another careful kiss to his lips. The temptation to tease him further was so very strong, especially because I could tell just how easily Reuben would let himself be seduced. But there were too many anxieties behind that smile and those beautiful eyes. And he also looked really tired. So I thought maybe I should wait a little longer. Then seduce him! Girls being responsible about irresponsible decisions. Very demure, very mindful. We love to see it. We can stay like this for a while anyway.
I'm sure I'm heavy.
Not really. I pulled him back to me, wrapping my arms around him as he wedged himself between me and the back of the sofa somehow. It was nice, and for the first time all day, things finally felt right. I hoped he felt the same way. Everything else was pushed aside for at least a little while. And his face was the last thing in my mind when I drifted off to sleep.